Okay, welcome everybody to, we'll say this is the Word and Journey podcast, and we are talking about a movie. We're doing a movie review. Aren't movies great? We love film, and we hope you like this one too. So, on this show, I'm Moses. On the other show, I'm Reese, and that's a little confusing. I will have to get my branding figured out. But you must have too. But anyway, on this podcast, I am a lover of stories. I'm an aspiring writer, and in my day job on the other podcast, I'm a counselor. And I have another writer counselor friend here with me now. Hello, Caleb.
Hello.
Hello. So yeah, who are you, and what do you do with stories, movies, people, thoughts, feelings? Badgers.
Who am I? I mean, that's like the big existential question. We're really hopping right out of the gate. Who are we really? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I am a fellow quasi nerdy guy as well. I am a counselor by day, starving and struggling artist writer by night. So that's kind of where we first started to click, and we're like, oh, we both like movies. We're both therapists. We're both, quasi artistic. Why don't we just talk about that, right? Because there's not a lot of context where two men are just talking about things like this, right? There's not that many. So, but yeah, I in my practice I do a lot of trauma work. I'm also working a lot with people that are on the autism spectrum, with teens, kind of all over the place. Incidentally, Will here, he's not quite a teen, but he is on the underside of things, which was something that it's not that I didn't pick up on it the last time I watched it, but I didn't realize how young he was. But yeah.
Yeah, that is, yes. I don't recall that as well, or I did not recall that either. So that was a thing. So, which we can definitely consider that. But yeah, so if the listener hasn't picked up on it, we are discussing the 1997 film Good Will Hunting, starring Robin Williams, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Stellan Skarsgård, or in other words, starring the Genie, Jason Bourne, Batman, and the Baron Harkonnen. Which I think this movie, yeah, it was just like a lot better thinking about where these guys ended up. So, what was something that, okay, I guess, yes, it's more than 25 years old at this point, but still we'll give the obligatory spoilers warning because we will be spoiling the story. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
You should.
It's not tonight. Yes, it's not a kids movie, so I'd exercise some parental discretion, primarily just for language though.
Yeah, it's got more than 3 F words, so it gives you the nice R-rated right then.
Almost more than 3 per minute. But I think that's it. Like there's like a fight scene, but it's not like a violent one.
There's a love scene, but it doesn't really show too much.
It's not at all a graphic one. I mean, so I think that's it. Then thematic material. However, we're going to quantify that. Yes, but yeah, from a counselor standpoint and from a I love movie standpoint, what were some what was the draw to this film for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I love any story that shows even quasi accuracy around trauma. So we'll kind of, I'm sure, get into it a little bit more. Can't be an accurate movie about trauma unless it was like 20 hours long, because that's sort of how trauma is as far as what therapeutic work looks like and that kind of thing. But for the little 2-hour time frame, sort of showing who Will is. And even one thing that I was writing down this time is that it sort of leans into his genius, so to speak, or his intelligence, and how that was a perfect way to escape the trauma. So that was something that kind of like really, really stuck out to me. Again, when I was last time I watched this, I think I was in my counseling program. And I was probably in between being buried by books and assignments and all that. And I was like, oh, this is why I'm doing this. So I wasn't really reviewing it from quite an analytic lens like we are today. But
I think
yeah,
last time I saw it, I don't remember exactly. I don't remember when I saw it. It might have been even before my counseling program. No, after. I think that might have been why it got recommended to me. But so to briefly summarize for someone who has not seen it, so Good Will Hunting, set in Boston, I believe, follows the story of Will Hunting. He's 19, 20, and he's an impoverished construction worker who has been through, foster care and a bunch of trauma, and typically just hangs with his buddies, drinking and telling dirty jokes and having a good time with it. He also loves to read, and early on, we discover he's a mathematical genius. And so this becomes the at what's the college? It's a prestigious IT university.
MIT.
MIT, I think, yes.
Yeah.
So one of the very popular, prestigious math professors there discovers his talent, and immediately begins to want to scout him. Intersecting with that, Will also gets in some legal trouble, and so the way the story works out, as part of Will's parole, he has to now work with this math professor and go to counseling. And so Stellan Skarsgård's character is the professor. Robin Williams' character is the therapist, and so the story follows Will as he gets to know both of these fellows. At the same time, he's getting to know a woman, and they date. And so a lot of the story is Will's journey of honing his math skills, but also and also kind of developing this dating relationship. And from the math professor, there's a lot of pressure to like go out in the world and get a job and do something with your gift and be a benefit for the greater good. And all of this is paralleling the storyline that's really at the heart of the show is the dynamic between Will and Sean, between Matt Damon's character and Robin Williams' character, and it's Will's therapeutic process of starting off very angry, very guarded, very defensive, and then hitting an emotional climax at the end that is now very famous, and then he goes to see about a girl. So there's there's the brief plot there, and like we've already pointed out, there's themes of trauma. We could maybe read in a theme of addiction if we use a more expansive understanding of what addiction is, more like the compulsion and everything. There's a lot of family systems dynamics that get into it. I'm not a psychodynamically trained therapist, but I imagine that there's some of those things going on because the way that the therapeutic relationship is depicted, it's not standard.
Put that out there. If you get choked by a clinician,
right,
get the heck out. Like, don't see them anymore. Please.
Yeah.
Even sure. Robin Williams is the only person that gets a pass. Anybody else?
Right.
No.
Yeah. No. Yes. So that said, there's some non-standard elements, but there are some of those non-standard elements. I think there are starting to come more into our perspective is like, actually, these are kind of good. A typical understanding of the counseling relationship is that it's very sterile. Like there's my therapist. I don't know anything about him or her. They just ask me questions, and I come in, I dump my stuff, and then I leave. Something we're discovering with something like internal family systems, affect regulation theory, is that the actual like the human relationship and who the other therapist is really matters. It's not enough that you come to see me, the licensed professional counselor. You're coming to see Reese, who has his particular story, and it's the Reese-ness, it's the Caleb-ness that is a very vital element. And so in the movie relationship, there's a lot of this therapist shares a lot about himself, and it's a lot more interactive than what we stereotypically expect. So Yeah, I'm almost. I would almost say, looking at the therapeutic relationship, they almost everything about this relationship could conceivably happen again in like in a real context and actually be like kind of useful, except for the choking incident. That's the one extremely dramatized Hollywood like moment that, yes, if that actually happens, you know, you lose your license, go to jail, like Caleb said. Like if a therapist does that, go away and never go back. That's the only like really unrealistic moment, I think. But anyway, that said,
They actually did a really a beautiful job of with the you were talking about I'm not psychodynamically trained, like that sort of thing. It was really funny because the first clinician that he sees kind of carries himself in that way, and it was really humorous how he was kind of like following what Will was saying, um, and Will was obviously like cheesing him the whole time, but the guy didn't really catch on until later, and then I think just one thing, I guess I'm launching right into it, but one thing that I think Sean portrayed like immediately was genuineness. So that word, authenticity, all that kind of stuff, that gets thrown out a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. But I think that in the therapy dynamic, if it's not there, you're not going to get anything done. Like if the clinician that you're seeing, if it's me, if it's Reese, if it's any old person you might see, if they're not genuine, that's like another thing that would make you want to leave and head for the door. Obviously, choking would be more extreme, like a bigger reason you'd want to leave. But
right.
I think that what I really picked up on and thought they nailed about the therapeutic process was Sean not only did a lot of self disclosure. I was like, dang, this is like half of the session is self disclosure, but honestly kind of felt therapeutically pertinent. I still just felt like Sean was really well suited for Will because he was genuine about his Seanness, and that made it easier for Will to really be who he kind of hadn't had an opportunity to be around other people, right? Like it's sort of explained that the true family that he has is the kind of the motley crew of the Afflecks and then the other Irish Catholic guy. I don't know what the other actor's name is, but that's his crew, right? And those people are really really important to him. And so for Sean, what's important and advantageous again for him is that because he's from Southie, because in the context of the story, when they say Southie, that's like the hard part of Boston. That's like the hood, the projects, whatever we want to call it, like rougher side of the city. And so there's so much that Will doesn't have to explain that Sean just already knows. And I feel like that is such a valuable piece of therapy starting well.
There is that where affinity matters. And we see this where a person of color often prefers to work with a person of color. A queer person often prefers to work with a queer person. A person of faith often prefers to work with someone in their same tradition. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of really good and valuable reasons. Having a really significant body of shared experience, it does. It allows for it kind of saves them both a lot of work in building trust, building familiarity, shared language. Uh, yeah, none of those things on their own have to be deal breakers, because you could have a really great alliance even with differences in those. But it probably would mean a bunch of other work, maybe even done privately ahead of time. Like the therapist does a lot of work to really study this person's demographic, or the person coming from where they're at, does some work to be ready to interface with people of a different, different skin color, different faith or something. But they probably couldn't just kick it off right away and have like a really good clicking. They need to do some work. So having that affinity in this story, shared geographical background, shared abuse history, there that does save them some time. So I'd be curious some of your observations. they they center this therapeutic relationship, which I mean, there are lots of movies featuring counselors, and even in kind of prominent roles, but I want to say like a movie that like kind of as like is about the counseling relationship that's a little bit more special. So which is really wonderful to see this. No arguments at all. What are something? Why does this therapeutic relationship work? You mentioned there's a genuineness for sure. What are some other things that you see this film depicting in the counseling relationship that make it work? Yeah, and particularly that make it work for Will.
After that affinity has started, right? Like it hasn't finished, but it started, and Will has an idea of like, oh, this guy knows. He knows about the broader Southie context. He knows about the broader foster care system. Obviously, he doesn't know Will's particular stuff right away, but he knows the bigger things. But I think that what the movie does well, which in its own way kind of shortcuts a lot of other therapeutic things that probably have to happen beforehand. But again, we have 2 hours for this movie. But the one thing that he does really well is challenge Will. So what's really, really great is, they go for the walk, and that like beautiful vista, like that, whatever that spot is in Boston is like so beautiful wherever they were. I was really struck by that. But in that moment, Sean kind of says like, you got it all right, like Mozart, and then lists all this information about him, Beethoven, other mathematicians, other scientists. You've got it all right. So he kind of has Will pegged. Like, I see that this genius thing is doing incredible work to help you survive. And I'm not going to beat it up. I'm not going to lash out at it. But at the same time, it's head knowledge. That's all that it is. And if we are going to have a good dynamic, I need heart knowledge about who you are. And so, you and I could probably go back and forth about like, man, like in my program, they would talk a lot about carefrontations instead of confrontations, carefrontations. So really quickly, basically what that means is, so if you're in a therapeutic context, it's when a therapist, quote unquote, calls you out or is pointing out discrepancies in your thought patterns, but obviously in a manner of which is rooted in care. And obviously you could have it like parents with kids, like siblings with siblings, a pastor with congregants, whatever it might be, right? But he's doing a lot of self-disclosure, and he's doing a lot of carefrontation. But I felt like that moment, when it pans and, Robin Williams is doing his Oscar-winning acting stuff where you're just like, you're so glued, you don't have anything to think or say. You're just so present. But you can really see it on Matt Damon's face, that what he's saying is really registering. It's really clicking. It is speaking to this vulnerability, but not in a way where those other clinicians might be like, how can we improve your symptoms? Sean was really humanizing. You defend yourself this way. I get it. I don't know if it's going to keep serving you like it is right now.
Yeah. He's humanizing, but also from a human standpoint. And yes, there's a lot in this scene. So this is the duck pond scene, where I think it's their second session. They're going for a walk, and yeah, it was one of my favorite scenes of the movie too. I think what I see is, yeah, so like you said, there's this confrontation or this carefrontation. I like that term. My thought, part of why this works for the character, so confrontation doesn't really work for every client. So there's already a particular personality that will value that sort of like directness, frankness. And Will's a fighter, like he don't take no crap from nobody. So
literally a scene where exemplifies that. So.
Yeah. So there's already a perception and an attunement that's necessary to know this person needs more direct versus more gentle. So there's a measure of skill going on there. The way that the Sean character does it, I love what he says too. Like he has this line, do you think I know the first thing about who you are, how your life has been as an orphan, because I read Oliver Twist. And that differentiation between things you read and know in your head versus what you know in your heart, in your soul. In Orthodox language, we say in the nous, the part of you, that deep part that can perceive God.
Mhm.
And there's which I mean that's a scene I would pull out for like general use, not necessarily for clients. Be like, hey, this is an important thing to know about how we know people and know stuff, not just head knowledge. But I think the confrontation works because the Sean character is really working to see the Will character, to see and to know, which I think that's where some of the other therapists missed it. They were like seeing themselves, or here's my modality, or here's my time, or here's a pathology. Williams, he's really working to see a human, and he succeeds. And it seems like that that being seen, you know, Will's character, he's being seen, he's being known in a fairly deep way and challenged on that. But like it's like all of those things together, combined with, I think, kind of by the second session, we're kind of aware of a lot of the Sean character's countertransferences. That's counselor jargon for things about the counselor. And again, often in our training, we're sometimes taught like be aware of your countertransference and don't bring it into the room. Some more advanced techniques are actually now recognizing recognize your countertransference, like don't let it get out of control, but that's a valuable source of insight and wisdom and perspective and connection. And when skillfully shared, facilitates connection or facilitates the sense of like, I'm not just a therapist, I'm a human. And what you need is not a professional suit giving you a diagnostic. You need an encounter with another human. And starting with this moment by the pond where there's this really tender moment of like, I see you, I'm giving you your autonomy, you choose what we do with this. And then I'm going to now, for the rest of the movie, be a human with you. I'm going to, challenge you. I'm going to laugh with you. I'm going to tell fart jokes with you. I'm going to share stories and dreams with you. Eventually, I'm going to hug you when you break down crying.
Right.
Like the human encounterness of it, I think, is what really makes this slightly dramatized relationship work.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it bridges the gap between being great therapy and great filmmaking at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
because it just, with how the lighting in the movie in general, now we're going a more cinematic way, but in general, it's very, very warm, which you don't see as much in modern movies because they are really granulated and they kind of go back and sort of edit things in a way where everything feels a little bit more monochromatic. But what I noticed is that a lot of scenes in this movie, they were really bright, they were really warm, and this was probably the warmest scene, which again is really fitting because this is when they are really getting to know each other. But one thing that I agree with what you're talking about, that the humanness is what's squared and what's upfront and personal, literally personal. And I think that I can't remember the whether it's a thinker or writer or someone where they were talking a lot about power over dynamics. So in other words, when you're in a situation where, like a counseling relationship, I mean, we have to acknowledge as clinicians ourselves, but also even when we are on the other side or in that dynamic in general, there is a measure of hierarchy or there is a power imbalance, right? This is why it's so important that we like do our ACA, we do our code of ethics, we maintain all these standards, right? Like it's to protect more so our clients and then obviously ourselves as well. But anyway, that writer talks about within dynamics like this where there can be a power over situation. So again, like the first two clinicians, oh, they're wasting my, he's wasting my time. Like, why would you bother? Like, da, da, da. Sean was very much like, I'm going to be power with. I'm not going to be over and I'm not going to be under. Like, if anything, sort of what you saw in the other two, oddly, was a little bit of power under or a not enough of a tuning, a not enough of understanding Will's personality, but also the trauma and what would need to be said, what would need to be approached in order to really get Will's attention, right? Because if it's just doing run-of-the-mill like caricature therapeutic sessions, the guy knows Freud, he probably knows Jung, because he knows all these figures, right? So he knows what how to act that part, right? Like that's the thing that Will does so well, is he can act so many parts so well because of that photographic memory, because being these. But with Sean, he's kind of like, you can put that genius to the side for a second, and you can be a kid from Southie, and I'm a kid from Southie, and then we can just talk about life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it's that power with, it's just, even when you said that line earlier, and again, Robin Williams, like rest in peace, but like the best.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were repeating that line about like the first thing about being an orphan, and just because I read Oliver Twist, even now, as you just said, I like got chills, because it's such a powerful, like, us as clinicians, we do the best we can. We don't get those moments all the time with clients, but when we do, it's this sacredness that it's so hard to put into words. And so when you see it on film, when you see it so well captured, I think this is why so many counselors in general love this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a sacredness, and I think that's the really great word that you use. That obviously it's not a Christian movie. It's not made by Christians. It's not made to like be any like thing explicitly gospel or something. I arguably it's not even meant to be like a counseling movie. I mean, it originated as like it was going to be like a theater production, and actually I was looking through some interviews. The original drafts had it as more of a thriller movie, where like some of the jobs he was being offered were like more NSA sorts of things. Yeah. So like it went through its own evolution, but in what's there, when people touch on something sacred, that is readily apparent to people who can perceive sacred things. And now I'm looking at this now through the lens of, again, Eastern Orthodoxy, where iconography is really central to our practice. The practice of venerating our saints and our elders, and the people in our community and tradition who have been recognized as achieving great things in holiness. We talk about like spiritual athleticism, and they've just the ways that they've lived, like the way that they've met God in their inner life, the way that they like hone their character and their soul, like it changes them. And one of the ways it changes them is they become more present with reality, like the ultimate realities. And so like you encounter one of these people, you're encountering the divine. And that's laced in with our theology of the image of God. Every human is the image of God, and that's always the case for every person ever. And so anytime you meet another person, you're encountering an icon. And so every person is worthy of veneration for that reason. And again, obviously there's zero mention of icons in this movie. And yet what we see is here's this therapist character, and essentially he's venerating his client. He's seeing, I'm not seeing the troublemaker. I'm not even seeing the genius, and I'm even seeing past the trauma. I'm trying to see the actual person, and I'm trying to give respect, give of myself, give of my presence to that real person, and facilitate like a really true encounter between humans. And given circumstances, they need to do it within a professional structure. There's a time limit to it. There's some professional guidelines to it, but the way that those guidelines, even within those guidelines, like the way that Sean's character uses the time is to be a human encountering another human. And as we get to know Will's story, we kind of find out he hasn't had that. Like his early humans were really cruel, were really abusive to him. And as he grew up, like other real humans, like Chucky, the Ben Affleck character, he's a best friend, but he's also kind of kept at a distance. Skyla, she's a really wonderful, really loving person who wants to be with him, but he's pushing her away. He won't, like, he'll have sex with her, but he won't really let himself encounter her. And then the professor, he's just like, yeah, what, whatever. So this space where there's kind of no choice but to encounter another human is both really challenging for Will, but also really healing.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking a lot about how just looking at this from the story lens, and from even comparing Will and Sean's dynamic to, like, Frodo and Gandalf, or Harry and Dumbledore, Yoda and Luke. It's a different format, and eventually the comparison would fall apart. But I think what the storytelling does so well is use therapy as a medium to sort of show why, in general in life, and kind of similar to what you were talking about with veneration, why mentor figures, in one way or another, for Will, it's his therapist, but for all of us, it's going to be somewhat different, and it could actually be our therapist. But we need that kind of director, in a way, some sort of influence that guides us into what we really want. And that was a bit where, to kind of pivot a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, right after the warm pond scene where, Robin Williams crushes it, and we're like, oh my gosh, that's why you won awards. Their very next session, if I'm not mistaken, is complete silence.
I believe it is. Yeah.
And one of the things that I loved is that this movie kind of shows what life as a clinician sometimes with clients can be like, where you can have a session where you kind of nail it out of the park. And, with all humility, you can be like, I think I did good work today. I think we really got somewhere. And then the next session is a total crapshoot. And you don't get anywhere. And that's just like so par for the course in the therapeutic journey. And also, again, like, thinking about story as well, that's kind of how it lands with when, again, we think of those dynamics, Frodo, Gandalf, Luke, Yoda. Some moments where, Yoda will teach Luke something, and then Luke gets it, and it's awesome, and there's, hooray. And then the next one is a complete failure, like, doesn't work at all. But that's what life is like. Like, that's true. And I think that's where this story, even though it's, like you said, the therapy's at the heart of it, but I think people that are not therapists can really, really connect with it too, because it's such a they can just so easily pinpoint, again, either actual therapists that they encountered in their life or other mentor figures that had these kinds of conversations, walked with them in these ways in their life.
Yeah. I mean, you could even look at our Lord Jesus, who, mentored people, and, like, they didn't always do very well. So there were lapses. So, but the, I mean, you're talking about, hey, sometimes I do well, sometimes it's a crapshoot. I don't get anywhere. I kind of want to push on the language and be like, well, but you still showed up, and you still put another brick in the tower, and So we could comment a little bit on in the story, Sean versus Lambeau, like, Robin Williams, the counselor, versus, Stellan Skarsgård's professorship. The professor's on a timetable. He's got to save the world right now, and even if he can't do it, he's going to find the prodigy that will save the world right now. And, like, gosh, Sean, why didn't you just, like, get Will into a job already? In his really fun accent. And Sean, in his wisdom, recognizes this takes time. He's not ready yet. We can't push him. And that's I perceive that there's always this tension on a lot of therapists, especially when we work with insurance, to, like, come on, churn results already. Measurable outcomes, numbers, come on. I'm like, guys, go away. Yeah. When I've seen this a movie referenced in like trainings and everything, the clip they always play is like the climax scene where Robin Williams repeatedly assures Will that like his abuse wasn't his fault, and Matt Damon breaks down crying in a really gorgeous sort of way, and they always show like the climax of it, but I feel like we lose something a little bit when we look at just that little bit. Like we really need to look at, and there was also this session where they didn't say anything, and there's also another session where they fought about stuff, and there's another session where they made fart jokes, and this whole long string of just living and having human encounters, and every one of those sessions was necessary to have like this payoff that we all want. You know, as a counselor, I need to remember that. I mean, as I would hope my interns could remember that, and for us as people of faith, trying to live well, like we need every day of struggle to lead up to these epiphanies that sometimes happen. So.
No, 100%. I mean, the last note that I wrote, it was funny because I was watching with my wife, and I started jotting stuff down, and then she's like, "I'm going to jot stuff down from a research lens," and then she started writing some stuff. She wrote some good things. I've been referring to some of them, but the last thought that I had is kind of tied to what you're talking about, where it's such like this is the climax, like such a moment where you can compare it to almost any other movie, and it's like, all right, here's literally the resolution. Like here is things as they are unfolding. Like if you want to know the moment, it's right here, and it's a story where it's so obvious, but sometimes obvious. We're thinking about it from a story side because we're still writing stories ourselves. Sometimes obvious is good. Sometimes being straightforward is actually the way to go. But one thing that I kind of walked away with that is thinking like, I think what could be a misconception more for the client side and not necessarily the clinician side, but I just need the it's not your fault moment where I break down and then I'm like healed and it's all gravy and it's awesome and we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just not. There can be moments like that where there is a significant chunk of healing that is suddenly added, which is a beautiful and wonderful thing. We want to commend those, but it's not as simple as those moments that, I think a lot of people, and even us on the clinician side, we kind of either hope for or like sometimes point back to of like the Hollywood, like, but my dad, blah, 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 or like, I just need to da, da, da. And really having that catharsis and thinking that that is the therapeutic work itself, having those things said, having those things uttered, but really it's like, it's just the start. And it doesn't mean that like I was thinking about, so, he's got to leave because it's about a girl, which again, it's just poetic, great storytelling. My big thing is like, all right, who is he calling up in the Bay Area right when he lands? What clinician is he seeing? Because I don't think, obviously so, that he is done. I think he's done a lot of great work, especially for his age and what he's been through. Like he's done a lot of beautiful work, but he's got more to go. So, but yeah, I'm curious if you felt similarly where it sort of leaves you feeling like, or it can maybe unintentionally give people the impression that like, oh, you just have this one big cathartic moment and you're healed. You're good.
Yeah. This is a really good point you're bringing up. So we could, I'll answer. And then I want to ask your thoughts about like storytelling, hero's journey, some things, because we might experience it differently in both of those lenses. But yes, from a counseling perspective or from a healing spiritual growth perspective, we sometimes get to these big climax moments, but not always. And it would have been really interesting to write the story like without that climax, and have like a more soft, like I kind of just gently ease into like a new life, or I take a small risk of, okay, maybe I'll actually show up to a job interview and like not make a mockery out of it, and maybe I don't even take the job, but like I'm gonna maybe just like kind of dabble at that. Or okay, maybe I will start with, well, maybe I'll maybe I'll call Skylar across the country and try and do an apology that way before just like racing off the country this year. But coming to this idea of like, I mean, healing's a long process. I mean, healing's a lifelong process. I mean, ask anybody who's made it like 25 years in sobriety, and they might have, and it's not your fault, crying moment that they really love to think back on. But they also have like the other like 24 years, 11 months, 28 days, and like 9 hours where they have to like actually feel their feelings and just do work, and it's kind of dreary. And I mean, that would be really difficult to depict in a movie in 2 hours, but like that would also be like the more realistic thing, is like, maybe I do stay in Boston and I work as construction, but maybe I also become the dad who doesn't beat my kids, or something. And that would be just as much of a triumph in the real world, maybe even more so, because he's not like escaping his world, but he's learning how to be different within his world. So yes, it's a point well taken.
And I have a question to follow up, but one quick thing is like, it's not us saying that we're disparaging the scene. No, it's excellent. Like it shows such a good example of, again, I just view it so much from a trauma lens, but when you have like deep safety with someone and they can finally see, because obviously the scene before that is describing the abuse, right? So when I think about it from an EMDR lens, they're kind of visualizing it. They're starting to get the senses. They're starting to get the smells, the felt sensations. And so he is present in there. And then as he's recalling it and sort of experiencing it, and then Sean very astutely is holding it, then that's when he says that. So I guess what I'm saying is like, Sean did great. Like for all clinicians ever, you guys already know this, but like, yes, watch that scene and really pick up on how he's attuning, because it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I think that you and I are just commenting on sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But the attuning portion of it is really an important thing for clinicians to take stock of.
Yes. It really is a good demonstration of how one of these breakthrough unburdening moments can happen, and we hope for those, and they're good. They're to be celebrated when they happen. But similarly to where, again, in Orthodox thought, we have this sense of there is the uncreated light, and every now and then a saint will behold the uncreated light of God's essence for like a fraction of a second, and it almost kills them, and they live the rest of their life in relation to that, forever changed. But like they usually, oftentimes people might catch a glimpse of the uncreated light and then never again. It doesn't happen for everyone, and it doesn't happen often for the people that happens often to. But like there's a lot of the life afterwards that we have to live, and I would suspect that there's a therapy correlate to that, where we might have these unburdening moments sometimes, and they might be really tremendous and exhilarating sometimes. And there's also a lot of others of us who will never have that moment, but we will still heal, and we'll still have really rich, connected, intimate lives with people, and that can be just as good.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to get your question. I had another thought, but
okay. So thinking a little bit more story, because there's a story structure, and we like stories and everything. So, so if we now analyze this as hero's journey, does this fit into the hero's journey model? And if so, like who's what role? How does it?
Well, I mean, it is interesting because it is sort of if the whole point of what the hero's journey entails is the return home, what's interesting about how that would necessarily interact with this story, where the city itself is a major component, right? Like Boston is front and center. It's good, it's bad, it's ugly. So I'm not sure, and maybe I'm not answering the way you're hoping, but we'll see. I'm not sure if it demonstrates that idea, at least the final point where you've learned something, you've lost something, You've unlearned something, those classic things. Some of those components are there, but the idea of like returning home, which you find in almost all classic hero's journeys. I mean, I guess you could make an argument that Skylar would be home for him, like that kind of from an attachment lens, like finding genuine interpersonal love. Which, we could talk about Hollywood has overemphasized that and all those sorts of things. But if the whole point of it is that he had closed himself off to that, he has said, I can't have the interpersonal love. I can have and I remember I read a note about it, but I can have the brotherly, rough and tumble, swearing, drinking, cussing, smoking. Like I can have that love, which we can't undermine. I mean, that was a whole bit for me is one of the things that I loved about Sean, really quick sidebar. One of the things that I loved about Sean is when he puts the professor to task of like, the professor's making fun of Will's friends. And Sean is like, those guys were with him.
Mm-hmm.
They picked him up.
Yeah.
When his dad beat him up.
Yeah.
They were there. So you can't just like put them to a side. But anyway, story.
Yeah.
That's their story.
That's true. Yeah. No, it's a good point. So, So the resolution may not quite check the box depending on how we think of it. Skylar could be his home and he's returning to that. But he's leaving. And so we could maybe say, at the start of it, there's this disruption of status quo. He goes to jail. He now gets discovered by the professor and then lands on a new status quo where he's now able to connect to people and open to succeeding at something. And so it's just proceeding in that. On the other hand, we could say the story introduces this question, like, here's our character, here's our hero. Can he love? Will he do something with his life? Can we talk Will into working for the greater good with his gift and not being afraid of things? Which by the end of the movie, if that's the challenge for him to overcome, like, can I face my fear of love and commitment and intimacy? He faces it, and then so we could say that happens. But yeah, so if Will's the hero, the protagonist, Sean's definitely like the mage character or the mentor character. Skylar's a love interest. He's got his entourage, and I know that's another role. So kind of a sidebar. So one of the other moments I want to highlight is the conversation toward the end between Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's character, Will and Chucky. And this is where you could almost say Ben Affleck's character is in the role of the fool, like the jester, because like the whole time he's just like kind of silly and irreverent. The time when Will sends him to a job interview on his behalf, and he just like completely mocks it and is just so insanely awkward. It's great.
The most I've ever liked Ben Affleck. It's like
right. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't too bad in Pearl Harbor, but
yeah.
But one of the fun things about the fool character is like the deep wisdom held by the fool, and they also get to say whatever they want, and it gets accepted, and so Affleck's character is just positioned just right to have been so silly this whole show, but also have been really loyal to now in this moment say, like, I dream of the day when you just leave and go do something with your life, or however he says it. Confrontation. And it's like there's a way where that might almost be structurally like more impactful than anything Robin Williams does. Partly because of what you're saying, Affleck's character had been with Will for quite a bit longer, and so had a lot of relationship collateral to spend on that moment. So anyway, we like our fool characters.
I mean, I think that is like really well, like that's a really good insight, because one thing my wife and I were saying was at somewhere Skylar couldn't get through to him, or maybe we could say kind of poked a hole a little bit, and then Sean pokes a hole a little bit, and then Chucky just barrels it down for whatever reason. That interaction, because again, like the acting is really good. It's just Matt Damon's face, right? But you can really see that in the same way with that, with the warm lighting of the duck pond, he's really listening to Sean. That first like connecting moment, he gets that kind of not lost, but just like really pondering what's being said. You can see it there a lot, and I think that it does a really good job, because yeah, if it had been Sean says XYZ thing and then he's better, even for us, we would know that on the clinician side, a lot of times it's not really us. It's like it's a spouse, it's a friend, it's a brother, it's a dad, it's a pastor, it's a priest. Someone says something and maybe it's adjacent to what we've said before. Maybe it's kind of along the same lines, but really people that are close to you, around you, they can see things in a way. And again, when they are, I mean, it's like a, not necessarily an adage, but it is true that when there is like the comedian or the funny person, and then, which is sort of funny, Robin Williams, like, right? But when you have that moment where someone that, always gave you levity, always giving you jokes, still that loyalness that's present, then suddenly like gets serious. We've all been in those social situations where it's like the earth stands still as we're all listening, because they don't normally tap into this. So sometimes when you hear from people, the fools, so to speak, and they tap into the really real, then we're really paying attention.
It stands out more. And part of that too, you see, Robin Williams' character, it took him a year some to get to where he could say it's not your fault and it matters. For Ben Affleck's character, it took him like, a decade plus being a friend to be able to have earned the right to say that and have it mean something. And I mean, I think as counselors, we know this, and as story writers too, it's something we look for with our characters. We want to write our stand-up into your moment, or write the kiss or something, but our characters have to earn that for it to really be special. Like they have to struggle a lot for that glowing moment to really stand out. Because if it's all just like happy moments, it's like this was a little bit. This was my beef with My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, which I confess I did watch it and it was fun. I think the only way that movie works really well is if you look at it as kind of a metaphor for coming into the kingdom, and everything kind of just like falls into place, because it like the whole movie feels like the falling action of like the trilogy. But like, because it's just this long string of like, oh, happy moments and quick conflict, oh, happy moment, and oh, more happy moment, and like a whole story of happy moments just isn't really interesting. So there's that. Other story structure question. So who would you pin as the antagonist in this one?
Interesting. I mean, I think that the logical first impulse is the professor. But I'm not sure if that's actually the case. I mean, I think one of the things that makes the film so astute, and I think you and I texted about it, but like these guys were like 21, 22 when they wrote this. Like, good night. Like, how did they get it so right? But yeah, it's really strange, because I think maybe when it's a story that's either not fantastical, or obviously this is fiction, but it still has a realistic lens to it, and it's not a drama, it's not like a crime drama, or something in that vein. It's kind of a normal story. I'm struggling to find this term. It doesn't have a traditional antagonist. I find like that was my first impulse, is to go to the professor, but maybe you set me up with this question because you've got a character in mind, but I can't really, like, off the top, I can't think of it.
Yeah, I didn't have a specific idea. I mean, I think I was initially leaning toward the professor too, and but that comes to, again, knowing agendas. Like if we say Will's agenda is he wants to be a deadbeat, then yes, the professor's opposing that because he doesn't want him to be. But again, in this kind of ordinary world sort of drama, like Will kind of doesn't know his own agenda, or something like that. So there's a way. Again, it's a divergence from traditional story structure, but Will is kind of both the protagonist and antagonist for himself. Could maybe see it that way. But
that was another direction I was leaning, as I was like, it is kind of internalized at some level, obviously. And we don't have like in a scenario where if it was more like if it was what you in some like cringier movies that have trauma elements where they glorify the trauma, which you and I should talk about how awful that is and how they should stop doing that permanently. But this movie doesn't do that. I mean, what it does, like I was saying, in that climax, it does so well is you suddenly visualize Will and Sean as their dads walk up the steps, but it doesn't do anything where it's like glorifying it over too much. So anyway, that would be another one where it'd be like, oh, is it the father character? But because it's so well written and it's really honing in on Will and Will's struggle, then again, like you're saying, it's kind of like, you know, he is the protagonist and antagonist. Another question. Okay. I was curious about, so we can look at it pop culturally from both of the lenses. So you can maybe take your pick first and we can go from there. But what do you think Good Will Hunting's reputation is pop culturally in the film world? What does it kind of click to?
I don't know that I could speak authoritatively or with any sense on that because I may not actually be connected enough to the whole film world in general. I think I don't know that I actually hear this movie referenced very much as just a movie, other than it's like, oh, this is where Matt Damon and Ben Affleck became famous, and like, wow, look at these brilliant people, and oh wow, look, there's Jason Bourne, there's Batman, there's whoever they became, and we love them, and gosh, we miss Robin Williams. So as a movie, that's usually how it comes up for me. Like, there's at least one reference in another movie. So in the movie Honey Boy, that's Shia LaBeouf kind of telling his story, which maybe we'll hit that one at some point too. Because
probably.
Speaking of family trauma, anyway, but there's and they do something weird. They just do something really interesting. Like in that show, like the main character in that one kind of has a breakdown moment, but then like kind of references this Good Will Hunting moment in a way of like kind of invalidating his own moment. Like, oh, look at me, I'm crying. Oh, because I'm an actor and screw you. And it throws a spin on the whole thing, and you kind of wonder, so was this whole thing fake? Which again, from a storytelling perspective, is really interesting. It creates a really interesting story experience. But off the cuff, that's like one of the few like movie references I have to it. For me, I hear a lot more like therapy references. Like counselors love this movie because it's about a counselor, a really good counselor, a decently depicted counselor, and because there are a lot of elements that are done well and are done properly, and they're, I mean, again, you know, aside from the choking out moment, there's a lot of ways where a counselor could look and say, oh, I could copy that carefully with certain people, or at least like the general attitude of it, and it could be used as a teaching tool in some ways. Yeah, what are you thinking of?
I want to comment on the choking thing that we've joked about. I in my Sec Today profile, I've got to stand out and be unique. That's kind of my thing. And so when I wrote my little blurb about this is why you should do counseling with me, I'm like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting minus the choking scene. But that was funny. But anyway, but even that speaks to pop culture. But I think that you're right. I think that I'm just like a ginormous cinephile, so maybe I'm kind of stuck in my own echo chamber of like all these people that watch all these film analysis stuff, film essays, special features, all that kind of stuff. Like I'm the person that spends way too much time doing that. But I think that one thing that it sort of showed, and that I think it kind of speaks to now, and that in some ways Hollywood's kind of like since forgotten, is that you don't really need a ton of money to film something that really connects with people and that they really, really enjoy. So, like you said, it is true that this is where Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, people are like, oh, these young guys are talented. And like, oh my gosh, Robin Williams could be serious. That is definitely the main things that are kind of like known. But I feel like it just shows that when the writing is really earnest, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because you and I could probably look at it from the storylines and be like, there are some beats or some moments that, maybe don't land as well as others. I mean, pretty few. It's really up there as far as like being super, super good. But I just think that there's an honesty that's here that I think is what is a big draw for people to kind of come back and be reminded of watching. Even my wife, she was like, it's been a while since I saw this, and still holds up, still is really good. Because now, we're at a point where societally, culturally, we could argue about this sort of thing, but sometimes people will be like, oh, this movie is not culturally appropriate anymore. And there are a couple lines that people will probably say that about this movie for sure. But generally speaking, it actually is one of those that like, yep, this will hold up forever. Like, I don't really see it being like, oh, we know better now. Like, it doesn't really have that sense about it. And a lot of the cinephile people that I follow on social, on YouTube, on any of those places, love this movie. Always highly vet it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I would agree. Like, I mean, I have fun with like the Marvel Cinematic Universe as much as the next guy, but it's special effects, it's superpowers. There's a little bit of story in there, and a little bit, and a lot of special effects. And I would agree. Stories with character, they connect to the humans, they connect to the audience, and those are the stories that last. Like with like the Marvel movies, like the Spider-Man character has endured. Like the like, well, I know it's the DC universe, but like the Batman character has endured in many, many, many forms. Some of the specific forms are really forgettable, but like the character connects with people. And something like Good Will Hunting, I'd agree. Like, yeah, it could have used some non-white people in it somewhere. But there's these really deep human truths that are really essential, and that I would agree will probably always be recognized as there's something good and true there, and we didn't need a lot of special effects to tell it. Just needed a lot of beer.
And to anyone listening, we are not disparaging all the MCU. We are not like naysayers or anything like that. We're just saying that the serialized format, we're getting a little tired. The Endgame and Infinity War, thumbs up. That was cool. We liked, or I should say, I liked that. I thought that was good. But we're just saying that other stories can be told. So what's happened is that we have to go back. We have to go back in time. We watch Good Will Hunting, and we're like, oh, other earnest movies that used to be produced and go to the movies for. But yeah. But I mean, is this a good time to pivot toward maybe just like we're very clinician heavy. We're talking about these terms that for average listener, they're like, what in the world is that? I don't know what that is. But if we just kind of think about it from the pop cultural therapeutic lens, what are some things that you think are communicated here?
So it definitely plays with some stereotypes. The first couple therapists interviewed are kind of play into like the extremes of counseling's weird.
Stiff old white guys.
Yeah, counseling's for crazy people. Pop culturally, there's a sense of therapy is exciting. Therapy moves along. My therapist is my friend. It's a little bit removed from the actual environment. Like they don't show any scenes in the waiting room. There's no exchanges of money. There's no documentation.
Paperwork.
Formal diagnosis isn't discussed. There's no treatment planning. That sort of thing. And all of those are part of the structure of it. A lot of therapy involves some sort of technique, or a lot of therapies like like mindfulness work, DBT work, ACT work, IFS work. We could put acronyms for those in the liner notes. But there's method to all of those. In the show, there's no particular method to it, and that, well, sometimes you run into that. Usually when you run into that non-method approach in real life, it's because the counselor is unskilled or very new or doesn't quite know what they're doing. So usually that's not a good sign. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Telling them like it is.
Yeah, which I mean, I have sessions like that too sometimes still, because I am still developing my skill, and sometimes I'm just tired. But usually there should be some sense of, we have a clear sense of we're working on this together, and here's kind of the method we're going to use, or a couple of methods we're going to use. Pop culturally, how does this depict therapists? What does it say about therapy?
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think you hit on a lot of things when you were talking about we look for this like breakthrough moment, and then after that we're done. Like that idea, I think, exists in the pop culture sphere, and that's one to be careful with. So I don't know, what else do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like you're saying, like it's really hard to like Hollywoodize or make the other parts of therapy sexy, like can't really do that. There's a rather mediocre show on Apple. It's with Jason Segel, who I normally like, but he is a therapist that, man, it is the Wild West in that show. He is breaking every single stinking protocol in every moment, in every scene, and I'm like, oh, like, is it just because I'm in the world now that I like can't really watch this or take this seriously at all? So I guess I mentioned that to be like, you are right as far as he doesn't have like a, like we could say, oh, he's person-centered, but you could lazily say that about any therapist that's like worth a grain of salt. Like, yeah, you can say that. But beyond that, there's not like oh, that was an ACT intervention, or oh, that was an EMDR, And again, like he said, we will have these acronyms down there so that you understand what those mean. But I think maybe to defend it a little bit, I think that I actually love that the first two clinicians suck and they're not very good at all, because that's what it's like on the client side. Every single time, the first two are terrible, the third's great. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it takes time. And if you're in, if you're in my digital office, if you're in Reese's digital or physical office, like you can know pretty quickly whether it's going to be a good fit or not. And sometimes it has nothing to do with clinician being bad or like not knowing what they're doing, but the vibes just aren't there. And there's kind of nothing else to it. Yeah. And so that component of it, I really appreciated. And it's sort of like highlighting what I mentioned earlier, way back when. Just that, like, him being from Southie, him knowing a lot of what that Boston culture is like. There were just so many reasons that Sean was the right fit. And it was actually even before they met. There were so many things, like kind of the season of life that Sean was in. Like, I mean, we didn't even touch on this. We probably could have, but like Sean's got some stuff too. He's probably got some things he should work on as well.
Yeah.
But so there was that, humanity and the genuineness that it seemed like Will really needed. So that component of it, I really, really liked. And the humor, like that was something that my wife kept pointing out. She was like, see, there's humor. Humor's so important. And she'll tell me about her own sessions with her therapists and how they'll be laughing and there will be joy present. And that is that's so true how important that is. But you guys,
I did find it notable the way, in Will's journey, he starts out being angry. He's able to access laughter and joy way before he's able to access like sadness and grief. So that definitely tracked with that. Humor is really important. So
yeah, and then kind of on that note, that like really the best clinical relationships, you're going to have sessions that are kind of color coded with as many feelings as possible. Like, in other words, like you were just saying, there'll be some that are joyful, there'll be some that are somber, there'll be some that are like exciting, there'll be some that are like lost. Like, it sort of shows what Sean does really well is like kind of feel out the water, sense the tone of where Will is at, sort of what he needs and what we all as humans need, which is very day by day. But it's all underneath really about what we're feeling and how it needs to be felt by the person across from us. And Sean displays that really well.
Yeah. Just coming back to like in this in the way that humans can encounter each other, there's ways that we can know each other. Again, not from a book and not always with the head, but there's a deep knowing, and one has to make oneself open to it. And that's something we see that, you know, Sean's character already does, something that Will's character learns to do. And in real life, I mean, it's something we ought to be doing with each other, is learning to know each other, be with each other, feel each other. And yeah, it's beautiful. I really love this. I really loved watching it again as an older person, as a slightly more seasoned counselor, as an Orthodox person. It was great. I definitely recommend it. Again, wouldn't show it to my kids yet, but I don't know, when they get to be like older teenagers, yeah, absolutely. As a classic and as a great example of like, hey, here's a healing journey. It's good.
Yeah, I really loved it from the accurate depiction of how people avoid their trauma. I think it does a really, really good job of that. Whatever people tend to be really good at, they just double down on that to avoid their trauma. And this movie does a really good job of demonstrating that. I mean, I guess maybe one thing to wrap up and close, I guess we can think about it from the therapeutic context, but from the storylines. What's something that, you know, you'll maybe not like all of a sudden adapt into your purpose or into your stories? Maybe something within the film that either is like encouragement or something that you might find yourself trying to emulate in one way or another. And maybe it's not present, but just curious.
Things that emulate. There's a creativity to how this therapeutic relationship happens, or kind of an openness to like being creative with like how do I connect with this person, which in this case ends up looking like a lot of self-disclosure, a lot of humor. That's not going to work for everybody, but you get the sense of here's a counselor who's skilled, who's ethical, who's caring, who has a toolbox to draw from and a lot of experiences, and is able to kind of be creative, think outside the box a little bit, like outside the box, not outside the tool shed, because you could get creative and get unethical very easily. But yeah, I you know, I feel myself falling into my own ruts sometimes, so yeah, so it'd be good. Yeah, and anything for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from the storytelling side.
Okay.
And then I would love to hear yours. But I think for me, what this movie shows, and I think a lot of really good movies, a lot of times the best ones are the most simple ones. They're not trying to do something too extensive. And you could argue, oh, it's because it's a 2-hour runtime. Fair. But like, there's something about, like we were saying, the "it's not your fault" scene. It's very obvious to all of us that this is what the movie is hinging on. And yet, even though we know that going into it, it works every time. And so sometimes doing the most simple storytelling thing is the right thing to do. Like we kind of get up our own butts, you might say, creatively, and just trying to reinvent a wheel that could probably just keep being a wheel and keep doing what it always does. So I think for me, just for context, I'm writing a fantasy story. So I'm finding myself like sometimes trying to reinvent this wheel. So I take from the screenwriting that sometimes the most effective thing to do is straightforward. For the therapeutic side, I think that I just feel encouraged to lean into the genuine that Sean shows. I really like what you said. I mean, I think it's like an adage, but like in the toolbox, but not out of the tool shed. You know, still being within reason, not being like way too left of center, so that suddenly we're like that other stupid show with Jason Segel, where we're like not therapists anymore. Still being a therapist, still having that in mind, but understanding that really people want to connect with another human being. So what does it look like for me to always be in touch with that? And like you said, sometimes we'll be tired, or sometimes we'll be like, but then if I have this intervention, or if I have them conceive of it in this way, it'll be perfect. And sometimes taking that off and be like, nope, this is probably just a moment where they just need to be acknowledged, or they just need to be like figuratively held, felt, known, and how that is the bread and butter. Talk about the wheel. That's the wheel of counseling. That's really what it is at its core. So, yeah. But you, storytelling.
Right from a character's fears. A lot of this is written so Will's afraid of intimacy. He's afraid of being seen. He's afraid of taking risks to succeed. And which isn't articulated explicitly until the end. But then you look back and you be like, oh yeah, that was present all along. That's his core motivations. So as a storyteller, if you have a very clear sense of here's what my character is afraid of, almost more than like here's what my character really wants. Well, I guess the character says, here's what I really want. But then you put out the question, so what if that character doesn't get what they want? Then what they're afraid of will happen. That's something I need to work on as I'm writing an epic about dragons and vampires, and it's very long and windy, and I'm realizing I might be able to simplify it if I really clarify what are they afraid of. So now I will be. Yes.
To fill in and like nuance that just a little bit. Like Skylar says it. Like Sean says it. Chucky says it. They're not subtle.
They're not
subtle at all.
But anyway, so yes, there's a lot there, and now I need to go. But but yes, this has been great. I love your thoughts and perspectives, and it's great to hear from another counselor and another writer about stories that we love and that make us think about things. So thank you for being here.
And then we were there was a movie that you had sent that maybe that would be our next one if we were to keep doing this. What's the name of that film again?
I'll have to check. But as we are hinting, dear listener, we plan to be back. So if you like this,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. My podcast page is at patreon.com/Outer Circle. And my second podcast, I don't know. Also patreon.com/Moses Bernabe. I need to figure out my branding. I'm branding in two places. But yes, that's where I'm at. And you can find Caleb. Where can Caleb be found in the world? Yes.
This is a mouthful, everybody, so be ready. Caleb Keller Counseling. Caleb with C. PLLC.net. That is my website.
Cool. All right. Well, stay tuned. We will be back with more films and books that talk about the inner life, mental health, trauma, addiction, spirituality, and maybe dragons and vampires too. So, thank you. Thank you for being here.